Yes. Welcome to Come Well to this rainy day. It's beautiful. I love the rain. So inspiring, so influencing. Yes. Welcome to Come Well to another episode, another doorway, another portal entitled Am I as I am? Most importantly, though, as you are. Before I go into today's video entitled The Demi-Urge, I was going to title it The Urge because it's really just an urge, but it's known in ancient mythology as the Demi-Urge. Um, Before I go into it, I just want to let y'all know that the classes are filling up for A.A.A.Y.A. These are my classes, my courses, and it's composed of 3 courses. First course is metaphysical psychonomy. The second course is occult biology, and the third and last completed course is biocosmology. So metaphysical psychonomy, occult biology, biocosmology. The sign up for any one of these 3 courses, but I would rather you go in the order that it was meant to be put in. Once you graduate from metaphysical psychonomy, then you go into the second course, which is occult biology. Once you graduate occult biology, then you go into the last course, which is biocosmology. Okay, so there's a certain divine order of these classes and courses that came about. Those who are interested and still interested, get in touch with me by email, which will be on the bottom of this video, on the bottom of all my videos. Seats are getting filled, classes are getting bigger, and the light is expanding because I'm about my shit. So let's get into today's video, today's message, today's light. The Demi-Urge, i.e., the urge. Let's dive right into it. We're going to split the word demi and urge apart at the moment to give you a separate understanding so that you come to a whole understanding of this title together and what it means. The word demi derives from the ancient Greek word demi, which is D-M-I, which later became the words Demidius and Demidius, meaning half, small, partial, a part of, and middle. This is what the word demi means, where the word demi came from. It means half, small, partial, a part of, and middle. The word urge derives from the word erger or erger, which means to push forward, pressure, drive, propel, compel, force, press hard, stimulate. And that's the word urge. Okay, you want to hear this again, just rewind the video again. And I always tell my students or people in the class, my attainees, to always take notes, either written down or mental. So looking at both words together, it means, looking at both the definition of the word demi and the word urge, when you put these words together now, it kind of means, or it means basically a hidden middle force constantly propelling itself forward towards a stimulation of some sort. This is what the word demi-urge together means, as 2 separate words, but together as one explaining, or one explanation, or one title. Together they mean a hidden middle force constantly propelling itself forward towards a stimulation of some sort. It's constantly looking to stimulate itself through your 5 senses. These meanings, in another light of understanding, also explains why the urge can be, in a way, overrun and or controlled to a certain degree. Why? Because of the meaning of the word demi. an urge in a certain way. Because it's just a small part of your experience. It's a small, minute force. It's not a whole thing or a whole force composed of a whole intelligentsia. Remember, the word demi means half, small, and partial, or something which can be a part of something. Small, half, and partial means that it's not a whole thing, but it's half, it's 50%. If you are not aware, have self-awareness, that 50% can be considered 100% because you are now taken over and possessed by the urge. The urge for what? The urge for many things. Um, you're gonna have some kind of urge for something. Sometimes the pretty side of urge can be called desire to a certain degree of understanding. But let's just keep it on the word urge and the title Demi-Urge as far as this video is concerned. Next doorway is both comfort and discomfort are a part of the Demi-Urge intelligence. You can only realize this. Now I'm going into biology and anatomy with the brain. You can only realize this when your lodge, which is where that lodge in the brain, you got the left hemisphere of the brain and you have the right hemisphere of the brain. And you have that lodge is in. It's called the longitudinal fissure. You can only realize this intelligence of both comfort and discomfort, this polarity, when your lodge, your longitudinal fissure, becomes the smooth ashlar towering over the philosopher's stone, which is the pineal gland. So only when your lodge pops up due to self-awareness, self-realization, and self-reflection, when you begin applying these practices, this lodge in the brain, that split in the brain, pops up. This is taught within the classes and courses I have, how to turn your anatomy into the Godhead, and the God body follows the Godhead. When your lodge pops up due to constant practice and application of self-awareness, self-realization, and self-reflection, and it becomes the smooth ashlar towering over the philosopher's stone. Philosopher's stone is a pineal gland. The philosopher or philosophy or philosophy or philosophia. Philo just means to have a love for something, a love for. Sophie, which is Sophia, the goddess Sophia in ancient Gnostic mythology, is Sophia represents knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So the philosophy or philosophy or philosopher means to have a love for. When you have a love and desire, a passion, a lust for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding within the philosopher's stone, within Philosophia's stone, that lodge becomes the smooth part, which is known as the smooth ashlar. Okay, just to make it on a mental understanding as far as a anatomical understanding, dealing with the anatomy of the brain. Okay, like I said, I also hold consultations as well if you are not ready for the classes or may just want to touch upon certain subjects to see where you are at spiritually and within your solar path. I hold consultations, and we can go through, we can build, break down, and make some breakthroughs together before, if you want to understand what the class is and what the class is about. We can go over that. Next doorway is what's known in ancient mythology as the Demi-Urge is nothing but what you call energy. And energy is an extreme. The Demi-Urge is basically things like praying, worshiping, crying, even laughing sometimes, etc. All these things are basically extreme-like expressions, meaning something in the process of achieving something. Praying, you pray to get something. Worship, crying, because sometimes crying turns to anger or derives from anger, and crying goes into a violent act. So it's an extreme nature. This is a part of the intelligence of what is known as the Demi-Urge. Okay, hold on. Shut this off. Okay, that's what is known as the Demi-Urge, or what can be known as the Demi-Urge, the intelligence of the Demi-Urge, because it is an energy. And if you know anything about energy, energy is an extreme or an extremity. It's seeking to reach an extreme point of achievement, an extreme peak of achievement, whether it be anger, rage, violence, murder. It's seeking and it doesn't stop. That's what an extreme is, or the nature of an extremity is. Demi-urge is nothing but an energy, and all energies seek to become an extremity. If your self-awareness isn't there to create a stop sign or a stopping point for its extreme nature. Okay. Next doorway is the demi-urge feeds off of both your happiness and your anger. Meaning, it feeds off a memory chemical residue secreted from your brain, your muscular system, and your skeletal system. Your brain, your muscular system, and your skeletal system. These are the three main systems that the demi-urge feast on. These are the three main systems that feeds the demi-urge intelligence and sustains the demi-urge, or this urge, this cosmic urge, this unknown urge. It's within the brain, the muscular system, and the skeletal system. And both of these things and all of these things produce happiness and anger, both polarities of this reality. The muscle memory chemical secretion it feeds on, because remember, it feeds off of memory chemical residue. There's something within the residue or the secretion from these muscular systems and even the skeletal system, the brain, glands, that it feasts on. It secretes a fluid within the body, and that fluid, that secretion is what the demi-urge feasts on, or this urge intelligence feasts on to empower itself, to become more of an influence, to remain, to sustain, maintain its influence in your human condition and human experience. The muscle memory chemical secretion, specifically that it feasts on within the brain, is called acetylcholine. This is the recalling of a memory. When you recall a memory, you're like, damn, what's the name of that movie again? Oh, I know the name of that movie. When you do that, acetylcholine comes to the brain. Or this is why the anger is, they're like, why am I, you get mad of something that you didn't let go of 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, 5 weeks ago, 5 months ago, 5 years ago. That recalling back to the forefront that stays in the frontal lobe or the frontal cortex, that recalling that goes through the hippocampus and implants itself within the frontal lobe and frontal cortex becomes your frontal view. And that's all you see. That's all that you see. This recalling of a memory that goes in the hippocampus and dives down into the frontal lobe or the frontal cortex is called, in science biology, acetylcholine. This is a secretion fluid, a created, produced fluid, and a secreting fluid that only occurs within the brain. So the muscle memory chemical secretion that the demi-urge feast on within the brain is called acetylcholine. The muscle system, within the muscle system, what the demi-urge feast on is called the intracellular fluid and intercellular fluid. And within the skeletal system, what the urge feast on is called synovial fluid. This is also the whole understanding of being born in sin. Synovial fluid is the memory fluid within the bone, within the osseous tissue, within the skeletal system. It's called synovial fluid. You were born in sin, meaning you were born in memory. You were born in thoughts of something of a greater magnitude. You see, everything is being held in place by the principle of vibration. And if you know anything about the principle of vibration, the next following principle that vibration creates is called manifestation, which is why you are manifested now in front of me, which is why I am now manifested in front of you. It's a present vibration being held in place. And this gets deeper, according to the mind of something of a greater magnitude. If you want to know more about that, there's a lot more to know about that. Book a consultation ASAP. So within the brain is called the acetylcholine that it feasts on, the urge. Within the muscle system is called the intracellular fluid that the urge feasts on and feeds on. And within the skeletal system is called synovial fluid that the urge feasts on. This is why it's very important to be aware of what you give your attention to and what you invest your emotions into, as well as creating facial expressions for these feelings and emotions when they arrive. Why facial expressions? Because that's the muscle training. And muscle training is memory training, meaning it seeks to create a deep residence within you that submerges itself way under the radar of your consciousness and your awareness. This is what the urge feasts on and where it resides within. This takes an extreme magnitude of awareness for the graduation or graduatory step into self-awareness. It's really about self-awareness, but it hides under the consciousness and the awareness. Because as long as it hides under there would never be no graduation towards self-awareness and self-realization and self-reflection and so on. There would be no graduation, no graduating. So then you just stay here. You just stay there, emotional and psychologically imbalanced. Because your self-awareness is absent. This is why it's very, very important to keep this in mind as the divine design that you are and that it is. Okay, and giving your attention into things and investing your emotions into things. And these facial expressions, because right now you can have a test, you can do a test right now. If you're happy and you're blissful and you're at peace, make an angry face. A really fucking angry face, a pissed off face. After a while, you're going to begin to feel angry. You're going to begin to feel mad, upset, pissed off. Why is that? Because facial expression stores memory. These are muscles in your face. So you do push-ups, or you do pull-ups, or you do dips. It doesn't matter. You're constantly doing it. So this is why when you do dips, you start to walk around like this, or you picking up dumbbells, and the memory starts to just do this. And you start to walk around like this. Or you do a lot of back exercises, and you start to just, your frame starts to mimic the constant repetition, because that's the memory that you keep putting it in. You keep putting it in this position. So that memory begins to create a fluid, and that fluid begins to sit in that memory. So whenever you do that flex again, or when you flex your face a certain way, that secretion fluid falls or begins to flood that muscle and then to begin to recall that memory. So this is why it's very important, just as much as you are centered, balanced, at peace, joy, whatever you're at, however you are, in the middle state, in a balanced or centered state of contentment, per se, so to say. Um, be aware of the facial expressions that you make, because the facial expression is the end point. It is the end result. It is the outcome. The facial expression after the inner expression, because it's the inner expression and then it's the facial expression. The facial expression is the end expression, and this end validates the whole. This is why you have movie stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone making all these stupid ass faces in movies, because it's trying to subconsciously train you to also make facial expressions when you're feeling something internally. It's saying if you're feeling something internally, give it an outer expression as well. But no, according to this path, if you feel a certain way, just have a blank stare or a blank face. There's no need to facially express what you are feeling internally. Because once you do that, you give it the whole body and head. You give it the wholeness. And now what we know about the urge, the demi-urge, it's only a half of a thing, a half of an influence, a small part of your influence, a portion of your influence. It's not a whole thing. But when you are feeling something internally and you make a facial expression to match that internal, you make an external expression to match an internal feeling, you have just given it the whole right to begin to influence you, because you gave it a body and then you gave it a head. Understand? Okay. Next doorway is both happiness and anger is like sugar and salt in a meal for the demi-urge. Every happiness leads you to a moment of anger. Every angry space points you to a moment of happiness. And just like a meal, when you have too much sweet on your plate, you sprinkle just a little bit of salt so that the sour enhances the sweet and so that the sweet enhances the sour. For what reason? To reach a middle point of satisfaction and contentment. This is how the urge satisfies itself. It needs you to be extremely happy. It needs you to be extremely angry, because both is needed to enhance each other. One gives reference to the other gives reference to the other. And this imbues the urge. It empowers the urge. And when you empower it, it's like making it God, giving it lordship and rulership over your influence and your psychology. And you already know the psychology trickles down into the biology. That's what it seeks to become the controller of your head and your body through the secreting fluids, the inner secreting fluids. This validates the fact more of that truth that present reality is the law of polarity, and that both polarities reference the other, which is what I just said. There is no good without bad, and vice versa. The more inner you go, the more outer tries to get your attention. The more outer you are, the more the inner calls you. This is why when you get too spiritual, or you become a vegan, or a vegetarian, or a nutritionist, all of a sudden you're eating so of nature that you just get a craving for M&Ms, or a craving for a bag of Skittles, or a craving for some Wise potato chips. See, everything is within contrast. One thing references the other. Or you eat like or the other extreme. You eat like crap. You eat a whole bunch of shit, a whole bunch of garbage your whole life. You like And at one point you just say, damn, I need to make a change in my life. Because you start to feel your chest in pain, your back is in ache. So now you say, you know what, maybe I need to eat more raw, more natural, more pure foods, more food that is of the soil, of the nature of this reality. Maybe then I'll feel a little bit better. One extreme leads to the other extreme points to the other. They both reference each other. And it was created this way to feed the urge. To feed the urge. To feed the urge. Okay, now remember, my videos ain't based on what's good or bad, wrong or right, positive, negative, pure or evil. It's all about understanding. All about understanding. All of my videos. None of my videos are based on good and bad, wrong and right, positive and negative, pure and evil. None of it. Because that's not how the Gnostics or the Adepts or the Humnicheritapi or the Akinme, ancient Olmec, Commission, ancient Dravidian, the Haribata Gosuri, oldest Sanskrit text, Hermes Trismegistus, none of this was based upon which is known as the ancient priesthood, the ancient sacred priesthood. None of this was based upon good or bad. All we said was, does it work for you? If we said, yeah, we said, okay, then so be it. Continue your path. Because we didn't want you to fall into the whole good and bad play, because we knew that that was a part of the urge to keep you here, to keep you cycling and recycling back here. But we knew there was something, and we know there's something beyond this. There's a transcending intelligence that once it's activated, this is left behind, and you are somewhere else. Or you move on to another plane of existence, or your next graduatory point of transcendence. Yeah, so I said the more inner you go, the more out it tries to get your attention. Like, for example, me, I'm becoming more nano within my studies. And certain books here as well. One book here is called The Isis Thesis. Now, this is very nano. This is very nano, amongst many others. So the more nano I become within my studies and my researches and my channelings, the more external madness is trying to catch my attention and redirect my attention to give it life. But I refuse to, and will never. I only play when I feel like playing. And this is the whole understanding of wave and particle formation, which is also within the classes and courses. And if you want to know more about that, once again, book a consultation. While I'm here in the present moment, while I'm here in the flesh, while I'm here in the body, take advantage of this light. Take advantage of this doorway. Because I'm not going to die. I'm going to leave the body. And there's a difference between dying and leaving. This is all fucking illusion. When I say illusion, I mean this is temporary. When I say reality or real, I mean that which is permanent. So this body is just a temporary encasing the permanent. That's what the soul is and the spirit is within the body. It's the permanent intelligence that took on a temporary contract. So stop giving a damn so much about stuff that happens here. Learn to not give a shit. It's a very healthy thing for you. For anybody and everybody in any situation and circumstance or whatever this human condition navigates you through. Okay? There's no one without the other. There's no one without the other here. And it is designed that way on purpose. as a kind of test course or testing ground to see if you realize what's really going on. And that's where the middle intelligence comes into play. That understanding is where the saying, the shaman walks the middle path, is explaining or subliminally implying. The middle path is the heart. The heart is the knowing intelligence. The brain is the second guessing, questioning, doubting intelligence, the scared one, the coward. This is the warrior. I remain here, the warrior. You should remain there, the warrior. This is the warrior. This is the worrier. The warrior, the worrier. This is how you can begin to decipher the difference and distinguish one from the other. That you no longer have to be confused now. But there's other methodologies and techniques to apply and practice and apply to become a certain point of pristine mastery of your mentality and mentalism, which is also within the classes, as well as another course I have coming up called Nesi or Nsi, which is one of the most antiquitous pronunciations. When I say antiquitous, I mean ancient. One of the most antiquitous pronunciations of the word, of the explaining of mind. Okay. Next doorway is for those also as well who are interested in that other course I just mentioned called Unsi, get in touch as well with the email on the bottom, and let's get this light moving and let's start becoming these clear, transparent beings that we truly are and really being it. Not just saying it, not just dressing like it, not acting like it, but living it, breathing it, being it officially. The next doorway is the urge or the demi-urge is going to get fed regardless because you have a body. You can't stop from feeding it. You can only determine what you will feed it, how much you feed it, and the speed at which you feed it, because it's going to get fed regardless. It feeds itself from your feelings, emotions, pleasings, and unpleasings, comforts, discomforts, births, deaths, pains, aches, struggles, luxuries, movies, music, wars, and peace treaties. Anything and everything. It's going to feed itself. You can't stop that. You can only determine how much you're going to feed it, when you're going to feed it, and what speed at which you will feed it. That's the only thing that you have any kind of control over in regards of the feeding process or the feasting process. It feeds off of what is known as the Osirian drama. This was known in ancient Egypt or antiquitous Kemet. It feeds off of the Osirian drama, which is nothing more than humanity itself, human nature, the human experience. In reference now, I'm going to give you something off of the Osirian drama and give you an example in reference to something. In reference to a relationship, which is how it feeds off of a relationship between a mate and between two people. In reference to a relationship or an ex-mate, one of its main courses or 5-star dishes that it loves to eat is through people who are connected to you strongly, emotionally, and psychologically, but who are emotionally and psychologically imbalanced severely, or who may become emotionally and psychologically imbalanced severely, who are connected to you, or who you made a connection with at one time. But one person becomes off or imbalanced emotionally and psychologically. The urge feasts on that shit. It loves that. It's like a 5-star meal, 5-star dish for it. It's like its main course. Because that imbalance and that void within them, within the person who is slightly imbalanced or severely imbalanced emotionally and psychologically, who you may have been connected to at one time, because that imbalance and that void within them is a big lack of logic, common sense, responsibility, accountability, and cognitive dissonance. And it feeds big time through individuals of that nature that find it very difficult and challenging to let go of you and your connection together that was once a thing but is no longer a thing due to maybe their action, something that happened, occurred. The connection was there, but then that connection now lost its reception and it's not receiving the same signals of care and love anymore. You're not receiving that anymore because something was done that disturbed that connection. And something was done to disturb that connection. But the one who finds themselves mentally and emotionally imbalanced finds it very difficult to let go of that connection, even though there's no more reception and signal within that connection that was once had at one time, but no longer is. And in most cases, like I said, it's the one who refuses to let go of that connection. And in most cases, the one who refuses to let go of that connection, which no longer has reception and signal, becomes violent at some point. And that violence is another delicious meal for the demi-urge. That's what the urge feasts on, that violence. Remember, I told you, it's an extreme. It's nothing but an energy. And the energy is nothing but an extreme. An extreme can't stop itself or control itself to a certain degree. I have stop signs and stopping points. You are the only thing that has a stop sign or a stopping point to no longer feed it with your anger, your rage, your violence. You don't have to feed it. You choose to feed it, but you don't have to feed it. You can let it die off, just wither away. So it goes from feeding it unconsciously to, are you feeding it consciously or are you feeding it unconsciously? People in this emotionally and psychologically imbalanced state feed the urge unconsciously because they lack control and discipline. They won't, they're irresponsible in their attitude, their behavior, their actions, how they animate themselves to the person that they once cared about. They're out of control. They're out of their own control. And that's unconsciously feeding the urge. And the urge loves that shit. As long as you lack self-awareness, then you lack responsibility and accountability. And you're pointing at the other one. You're not seeing what you do and what you have done. Even when the other one has claimed the ownership of their contribution, you're not claiming your contribution. And this is what the urge loves to feast on. While one person is conscious and aware, the other person is unconscious and unaware. The one who's conscious and aware has graduated into self-awareness, self-realization, and self-reflection. While the other one, who is emotionally and psychologically imbalanced, can have a certain slight sense of consciousness, can have a slight pinch of awareness, but never fully graduate and cross that bridge into self-awareness, which is like going from kindergarten to college. That's what awareness to self-awareness is. It's going from kindergarten into college, not kindergarten into junior high school and high school, but kindergarten into college. That's how big the gap is between awareness and self-awareness. When you are at self-awareness, self-realization, and self-reflection, you are at peace within yourself, and you seek not to disturb anyone else's peace. You see, because you don't want to create a tail and a trail. You want to cut the tail and begin a new trail, but not a trail outward, rather a trail inward to the knower, to the heart. But once again, these are mostly people who lack self-control and have no self-discipline, or lack a great lack, or have a great lack of self-discipline and self-control. And mostly people who are conscious and of a high spiritual accordance make contact with individuals who are unconscious. This is where the laws of polarity meet. You find your opposites. See, and the opposite is the lesson to the conscious person and the unconscious person. The one who has control is a great lesson to the one who doesn't have control, and the one who doesn't have control is a great lesson to learn to the one who does have control. Both are teachers, both are students, but it's just more graceful when both people have self-awareness and can graduate together into self-realization and self-reflection and so on and so forth, which is very rare. But it's more of a graceful presence, more of a graceful energy to appreciate when you see two individuals that are functioning in this accordance and within this vibrational state. Okay, so just maintain your cool, and by all means do not feed into it and do not feed it at all. It dies off. It will die. It's inevitable. Universal law. It dies. That energy dies. That entity dies. Once you break that contract, you don't feed it. You don't give it attention. You don't give it life. In metaphysics, giving something attention is giving it life. Don't give it attention. Don't feed into it. Don't feed the urge. But just choose what you choose to feed the urge. Don't feed it unconsciously, feed it consciously. The next doorway is the urge feeds off of the glands, particularly within the body. The glands. Why? Because the glands secrete fluids. Glands like adrenal glands, also kidneys, etc. Specifically, it feeds off of the body's inner liquids, inner fluids, and inner secretions. And in return, supplies oxygen to the body. Why does the urge feed off the secretion, the fluids, and the liquids, and in return, it supplies oxygen to the body? Because feeding oxygen to the body keeps its cycle going. It keeps the cycle of the Demi-Urge going. And it keeps it in constant rotation and constant restart for the sole purpose of its feed. So it feeds off your liquids, your fluids, your secretions, and in return, as it feeds, it gives you oxygen to maintain the body to keep feeding it. You see the cycle? And see why the recycle comes? You recycle back into the body, you return, you reincarnate because you are feeding the cycle. The whole point is to not feed the cycle unconsciously, not to be in the cycle, but to ride the cycle. Don't drown in the wave, ride the wave. It's a big difference. Like I tell people, I tell my students in class, begin applying and practicing witnessing your feelings, not necessarily feeling your feelings. There's a big quantum leap from one to the other. Big jump, big difference. Now, movie examples of the demiurge activity are movies like Little Shop of Horrors back in the day when I was young. I think like the late 80s, early 90s, maybe. Little Shop of Horrors. This is what some actor called Rick Moranis and a few others. The guy that was in Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, little white guy with the glasses. Rick Moranis. He was in a movie called Little Shop of Horrors, and there was this big plant or this small plant that started like a small plant. The plant was called the Venus flytrap, and I know that because I did a science experiment on it when I was in junior high school. When I was younger than maybe some between that or right before junior high school, matter of fact. I did a science experiment on the Venus flytrap. But it was a small little Venus flytrap that he bought that grew into this big, massive, almost human size and bigger than human size Venus flytrap. And there was a quote he used to always say in that movie. The plant used to always talk to him. When the plant began talking, it began talking to the man. They used to say this famous line, which I know that y'all know from 80s babies and 70s babies. He used to always say, the plant used to always tell the guy's name was Seymour. And he used to always say, "Feed me, Seymour. Feed me, Seymour." And that was subliminal. That if the demiurge had a voice and a language and a way of communicating to you through English, that's what it would say. Feed me, Seymour. And it was subliminal, meaning feed me so that I can see more. Feed me so that I can see more of you. Feed me you so I can see more of you. That's what feed me, see more subliminally meant. Other demiurge activity in movies are movies like Cabin in the Woods. I don't want to give away the ending, but this or certain parts about it, but there was something that was feeding off of people. Another movie is called Mama. It's a horror movie. Two little girls and a dead mother and something that was feeding. There was a feeding taking place in that movie. And also any and every damn zombie movie. Every zombie you see in every zombie movie is symbolic of a feeding, and it's a constant feeding. It's feeding, it's feeding, it's feeding. And what do zombies mostly feed on? And what they first feed on in the very first movies, Return of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead, they wanted to eat the brain. That's what the demiurge sustains its feeding within the brain, the psychology, the mentality. Because the psychology is the thing that creates the biology. The biology mimics the psychology. The biology follows the psychology. So as long as it keeps you in this raging, mad, upset, violent, whirlwind mentality, it's constantly dropping down from the thyroid gland, from the glands. Everything is constantly dropping down into the body, and it keeps a nice meal for it to feed on. Just as long as it manipulates this shit and keeps this shit going, this will keep running and will keep be nice and juicy and sweet and sour and salty, but to keep feasting on it, feasting on your glands, your adrenal glands, your thyroid gland, your pineal gland. It's going to keep feasting on all of that. Even though the pineal gland has a spiritual purpose as well, which is another soul, a seat of the soul in a certain way. The soul has 4 seats in the body. It doesn't have just one seat, or may have 1 seat and 3 projecting seats, or 2 seats and 2 other projecting seats. But the soul has 4 seats within you. If you want to know more about that, like I said, book 1. So this is what it does. These are the movie examples. The very first movie, I don't care what, 28 days later, 28 weeks later, 28 years later, whatever. Who cares? The very first zombie movie after the black and white one, which a black man was in. The black man was in the first very zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead. But when it came to color, Return of the Living Dead or Night of the Living Dead again, I think it was, not too sure. But the very first thing the zombie fed on within a human being, a person, was the brain. It wanted the brain. Feed me brains. I want brains. You should walk around saying brains, brains, brains. It fed off the psychology, the mentality. That was known as the Demi-Urge. Another understanding of the Demi-Urge. Now, when it comes to the chakra system, which is really called Sekra, and I also have another course called Sekranosis, which deals with the chakra work. And you don't have 7 chakras, or you have whatever chakras that you have. It's not just 7. It's, well, I'll get into that if you want to know more about that. Book a consultation or sign up for the course. But let's get into a little piece, a little hidden peephole of where the Demi-Urge resides within the chakra system, what you call the chakra system. It hides itself within the 3 lower chakras, or the 3 lower sekra. It sometimes will try and manipulate the 4th chakra, but the 4th chakra is where your soul resides, which is something it can't really touch or disturb. It's a thing way more powerful than it and more older than the Demi-Urge. It's more powerful than the Demi-Urge, and it's more older than the Demi-Urge. The power that resides within the heart chakra, within the heart sekra, the 4th sekra. Okay? The first 3 sekras represent birth to 21 years old. At 18 years old, during the 3rd sekra, you are considered an adult. Why? Because you can now adapt to the adopted cycle that has been created and orchestrated for you, and that you yourself have created and orchestrated for yourself during your ignorance and or unknowing stage of development. So by 21, or the 3rd sekra, you are now the completed cycle running in its own circle, feeding the eater, feeding the urge, the Demi-Urge. The word adult is the word adapt, which means that the Demi-Urge has now adapted to the feeding cycle that you have given it. And this goes into a lot of deep understanding, but it's very simple to understand. As you see my videos, my classes and courses are just as simple as the videos, how I explain it to you on these videos. It's very simple to understand. I give you baby food. That's how I explain it. If you want to hear this again, understand this little part about the sekra, the 3 chakras, just rewind this and take notes. If you have any paper and pen around, there's no paper and pen around, take mental notes until then, so you have some paper and pen around you. Next doorway is, now this deals with the alimentary canal, the part that connects the mouth and the anus. Every time the sphincter, which is the anal muscle, around the anal canal and rectum clenches up, tightens, contracts, constricts, and squeezes, stressing the alimentary canal, the Demi-Urge is in the moment of a feeding, which means a feeding is taking place. When it tightens and cuts off free-flowing oscillating energy between the root chakra and the crown chakra, or the root sekra and the crown sekra, it traps the energy in the middle. And the energy potentially tries to fester up and become a specific possibility. That possibility being emotional, pathological, or diseased. Diseased. This is how that trapped energy expresses itself, when it becomes trapped in between the oscillating force of the alimentary canal, which connects your mouth to your anus. This is why your anus contracts and constricts. If you ever get angry or pissed off or upset, or you scream, or you yell, or you're violent, if you can't be aware in that moment, you will feel your anal canal do this. It does this. It squeezes and it clenches. Matter of fact, that's why you yell and you scream, because the energy has to find a way out. If this is closed down here, this thing has to be opened up here so it can yell. And then when you're mad, you steam, and this is closed. This also remains closed down here, which traps the energy in the middle. And that energy in the middle, which becomes a trap, expresses itself as a dis-ease or becoming emotionally imbalanced and psychologically imbalanced, because it has to express itself in some way, at some time, at some point. It has to, and that explosion outward into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, which is why it zaps your sympathy for the person. You have no sympathy for the person. You have no empathy because you zapped it. It zaps. It's an explosion. That energy that's erupting, that's entrapped, it explodes through the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And then it begins to dis-ease your central nervous system, which is why you become off-centered now. Now you're not balanced anymore. You're off-center within yourself because it has disrupted your central nervous system. The central nervous system is connected to your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, which basically branches out from your spinal column and your spinal cord and wraps around your ribs and your lungs and goes inward and finds itself inward towards your central nervous system. I'm also a science biologist as well. All of this can be understood very simple to understand why you are the way you are. And if you want to make any kind of change and adjustment to your behavior and your attitude, you can. Once you do that instantly, your reality changes instantly, because this reality is based on instantaneous transformation. Like I said, you have part of you which is governed within time and a part of you which doesn't reside within time. You have a time nature and a timeless nature. The body is governed within time, which is what the Demi-Urge and the urge feast on, that urge, that time urge. But you have a timeless nature as well, which is known as the spiritual or the soul aspect. Which is why right now in this moment, you could think about what happened 5 days ago. You're also in the moment, but you can also think about what you're going to do 2 days from now. Or you can see yourself 2 days from now, right now. You have a timeless nature, but you also have a time nature. The urge feeds off the time nature. It doesn't like your timeless nature. It's a difference. Something called the Hegelian dialect. The Hegelian dialect. Hegelian. Dialect. The Hegelian dialect is the feasting cycle of the Demi-Urge, or the understanding of the feasting cycle of the Demi-Urge. And this is the feasting cycle that keeps itself feeding itself at all times. The Hegelian dialect is known as three pyramidal points, called the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. It's the costume and mask of the Demi-Urge, the invisible cosmic orchestration of what we know as problem solution, solution problem. Okay. Basically, the Demi-Urge is a systematic intelligence that creates a solution for your problem, then creates a problem for your solution. It keeps itself in these cycles to feed itself. It feeds itself. Feeds itself off of both of these cycles. Problem, solution, solution, problem. A problem for your solution and a solution for your problem. Keeps these cycles going to feed its cycle so that you may recycle, which is known as reincarnation, to keep feeding it. All to make sure you stay engaged and remain engaging in humanity's ups and downs, highs and lows, so that it can keep feasting on you, so you can keep feeding it. At its most primary core, it is nothing but an urge. And an urge is an ever-going intelligence that does not have a stopping point. You are the only stopper or stopping point that can place stop signs within its extreme nature. You are the only one that can do that, because you have the ability. If you don't have it at the moment or working on it, you are the only thing in existence that can begin to attain control and self-discipline. You're the only one that can do it, because you have the body. And the body is the stopping point. The body is the intelligence of limitation or limits. The body is the intelligence of boundary as well. And the control and discipline comes from a more spiritual and solar perspective of understanding. That's with self-awareness and so on and so forth. I was explaining before prior to. Just as you eat to buy time, you are being eaten as well. In ancient mythology is known as the god Amit. You are being eaten by Amit to keep its time present and its permanent purpose relevant as the subordinate deity that it truly is, that only exists here. The Demi-Urge is the bastard son or son. That's where the word son comes from. It comes from the mythology of the sun. The S-U-N, the word S-U-N comes from the mythology of the goddess Sophia's son, S-O-N. It is the bastard son that the great mother Sophia threw into the abyss because it was a bastard child, a bastard son. The father wasn't present in the physical form. This understanding can go in a few different directions depending upon where your knowledge is at, understanding and what you have knowledge of when it comes to history and ancestry and mythology. This conversation, this one thing I'm explaining, can go in multi different directions and different dimensions of conversation understanding. But basically, this Demi-Urge is the bastard son that the great mother Sophia threw into the abyss. And this bastard son, seeing this greatness above it, as it drowned within the abyss, and said, it kind of felt a way about being let go from the great mother Sophia. And this is Gnostic mythology, which comes from the Humnicheretapil, or the Hums, which we get the Hermes, Trismegistus, so on and so forth, talking about God energies and forces, God's energies and forces. There was no mother per se or a child. These are just energy descriptions, force descriptions, and principles that need to be interpreted and understood before being practiced and applied internally, mentally, first and foremost. So something was given away, and that something that was given away looked back upon that threw it away, felt away, and created things where it was at in the abyss, and created things to worship it and to look up to it and praise it. And those things that it created to worship it, look up to it, and praise it are called a human being, or the human body, or the human body pattern, or human condition, humanity, human nature, human life, animals and humans, insects, and so on. Anything that has life, it says, I'm going to feed off of that shit, and they're going to feed me. And this mythology adds on that when it began doing this, the goddess Sophia, seeing all this crazy madness going on that her bastard son created, and blew the spark of light into these creations that the Demi-Urge has created. And it snuck the breath of the soul and snuck the breath of the spirit into these little animating things called humans and animals and life forms, so that it can return back to her, the primal source, and surpass her bastard son. And the bastard son got jealous of that, understood that, found out, got mad, and then made man, M-A-N, Mem Aleph Nun, which means man, woman, child, or man, woman, offspring. It gave them a device of worship to create something called gods, deities, and deifications, to create just another disturbance or schism between the spark of life, the soul, the spirit within us, and the divine great mother. just to make it that much more challenging, which is what you call, which is what can be known as being unconscious, unaware, having no control, no self-discipline, no self-awareness, holding no responsibility, no accountability, no self-realization, and impedes any kind of possibility of self-reflection to occur within you. That's what that is also can also be understood as. The next doorway is the teamwork relationship of the demiurge and the ego. The teamwork relationship of what is known as the demiurge and what is known as the ego, which derives from the word ergo. But whatever. The demiurge is the energy of time, meaning the potential for extreme behavior. It's a peak or a peaking nature. The ego is the extremities of time, like violence, raging possessive states, etc. To reach a peak, to recycle you back into the grasp of another time vehicle. So the demiurge or the urge is the energy of time, and the ego is the extremity of time. Food, ingestion, digestion, nutrition, health, evolution, survival, etc. are nothing but things that buy time, accumulate time, and sustain time within the time body so that the ego can keep deceiving you so that the demiurge can continue feasting on you. When I said before to the same way we buy time, we eat to buy time. What you call vegetables, fruits, living organically, vegan, vegetarian, eating off of nature, Mother Nature. Food is synonymous with the word time. Time is synonymous with the word food. So when you are eating food, you are actually buying time. You're not eating food per se. You're eating time. Or you're consuming time. You call it eating food. I call it consuming time. And that's what it is. The demiurge is the energy of time. The ego, which is more of a personal aspect because it deals with your personality, identity, and character, it is the extremity of time. It keeps you in an extreme nature. Mad, upset, angry, violent, mad, upset, angry, violent, mad, upset, angry, violent. And these are extremes, and this violence tries to reach a point of murder or death. And once that creates that extreme point of murder or death where the person, the spirit or soul now leaves the body, that energy that was fed to the demiurge, the energy of time, just creates another body of time. You see, so it just uses you and abuses you through your thoughts, your negative or your feeding thoughts, your incubus and succubus thoughts that you create parasitic thought forms to feed on you. Because you're giving these attention, you're giving these thoughts attention. And when you give a thought and attention, you turn that thought into a thought form. That thought has now formed itself and expressed itself through the body vehicle, which is you. Because you have gave that thought attention. And there's a difference between thought and thinking. I always tell people this and I always go over it in class and course. Okay. Now, this is the last point, pretty much. Overriding the demiurge. How can you override the demiurge? A certain way of understanding. Like I said before, and I keep reiterating, begin witnessing your feelings rather than feeling your feelings. With the constant practice and application of self-awareness, self-realization, and self-reflection. This alone will begin to graduate you into control and self-discipline from having a knowledge of self. Am I as I am, most importantly as you are. I'll see you guys in A.A.A.Y.A. which is the classes and courses of A.A.A.Y.A. For those who are interested, please get in touch, reach out, but most importantly, reach in. But one thing, last but not least, look at the ego and the demi-urge in this form. The ego is the hitman, demi-urge is the godfather. The godfather sends out the hitman towards you. But it can't hit you if you remain conscious and aware and graduate over into self-awareness for the sole purpose of self-reflection that derives from a knowledge of self. I'll see y'all next time. Until then, keep studying, keep researching, and most importantly, maintain experiencing. 1-0.